Many times, too often, we use the word crazy too loosely. Funny thing is, we're all crazy, depending on which day it is. I'll just be the first one to admit it. Mental health can be a sensitive subject for many individuals for various reasons. Taking the initiative to address your mental health concerns can also look different for various reasons. Let's get into genetics. There may be mental health patterns and behaviors within the family dynamic. There may be a known history. There may be some unknown history when it comes to mental illness within family dynamics. Then there's mental health breakdowns, where a traumatic episode can trigger a mental health episode where individuals are forced into treatment. Then there's those individuals who ideally can identify where there's an unbalance. They're not feeling like themselves. They feel like they need some guidance navigating through their feelings and emotions. So they make that self-referral. How can I get treatment? How can I get help? How can someone guide me to feeling more like myself? What does mental health look like in children? That's also a question many adults can ask. How can I see the triggers? How can I see the signs? How do I address it properly? How will these families be educated on mental health? When to agree to medication? When is medication appropriate? Are these services available for myself and my child if needed? Let's get into some statistics. According to the World Health Organization, around 5% of adults globally suffer from depression. Roughly 4% are affected by anxiety disorders, 1% affected by bipolar disorder, and roughly just about 0.7% people worldwide are affected by schizophrenia. I can bet my last paycheck you're all thinking, oh, those numbers are not that serious. But don't get too excited. The paycheck is not that much. The real shocker is when you come to learn how many individuals, especially those in marginalized communities, they're not getting the help. They don't have the resources within their communities. Marginalized communities often face significant barriers to accessing mental health, education, and services. These barriers include, but are not limited to, socioeconomic factors, cultural stigmas, language barriers, and systemic discrimination. Unfortunately, this results in these communities being less likely to seek help or receive adequate support. And then boom, there's a long list of history and untreated mental health issues. But why? Sounds like an easy question to answer, right? An easy solution would be to say, hey, let's just build a mental health clinic in the heart of these marginalized communities, and the clients would just show up like we're giving away money. Absolutely not. What about the stigmas and misinformation that leads to unanswered questions and the reluctance to seek help? Guess what? Those children I mentioned, they have parents who have never had the opportunity to have access to any mental health services for themselves. So even if the mental health clinics were placed directly in their backyards, there comes additional factors associated with the access to these services. Children and their parents within these marginalized communities experience higher rates of trauma, discrimination, and family instability. These factors can lead to mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, and PTSD. How many of us here can say we would be able to identify these behaviors as a child or as a parent? I'll wait. Well, let's talk about my history within mental health. So I've had my fair share of working within the mental health field, more so within child welfare, as well as now in a wellness clinic. Working directly with patients, you come to see so many different things. Some where you can point out and you can diagnose, or some may take a little more time to get to the root of where these unbalances and feelings and emotions are coming from. So I came in contact with someone, and the presenting problem was teenager issues. No talking to anyone, no interest in doing things with the family. However, the family did recognize there was some help needed. Let's speed it up a little bit. This teenager comes in, they come in for treatment, and they express they suffered a traumatic loss. Someone very close to them, they had lost their grandmother. The person who had raised them for 15 years of their life. And you know what this young man said? No one ever asked him, was he okay? No one ever asked him, how did he feel about the loss of the one person that he felt the closest to. So all the adults around him, they were suffering with loss as well. They may have well been checking in with each other, but no one took the time to check in on this 15-year-old to say, how are you feeling? How has this affected you? How are we going to move forward? Mental health issues in children may be overlooked or misunderstood due to stigmas or lack of awareness, not only among parents, but there's also educators and community members. This significantly delays the identification and treatment of mental health problems. So, how can we reduce these stigmas? Providing mental health education to parents, caregivers, and teachers can empower them to support mental health needs effectively. This should include recognizing signs of distress and being aware of the appropriate resources. Increasing mental health programs in schools. Children spend majority of their time at school and then at home. Implementing school-based programs can provide students, educators, and parents with the tools necessary to manage these mental health issues, such as workshops, support groups, and increase access to resources. But most importantly, the understanding of medications and medication management. I just seen a story the other day. A school called a mom to say, we didn't have enough medication for Johnny today. Johnny's mom says, my child is not on any medication. This child had been provided the wrong medication. There's no communication. There was no communication. That's not going to end good. I can almost guarantee it. Thanks to Google, I can attempt to understand any medication I'm prescribed. But what happens when there is no access to internet resources or there's language barriers? When it comes to parents and treating psychiatrists, what happens when mental health medications are not fully covered through insurance? We can stay and joke and talk about this all day. Do you have time? I may not have the time, but we can stay here all day to address all of these concerns surrounding mental health. Again, we may all be crazy depending on which day it is, but how will we identify the systems? Where is the treatment being offered? Will I be able to access quality, affordable treatment? These questions are all legitimate questions we all may be faced with, depending on which day it is. My name is Andrea Beverly, and thank you for coming to my TED Talk.